Hey guys, good evening or good morning. It's midnight actually right now. This is Dave, your Jiu-Jitsu uncle, and I am at home. And because I decided to do laundry at 12 midnight, this is the reason why I kind of decided to just make something a little bit for next week's upload. Because why not? Haven't been having a great week this week from a physical or a mental situation. But anyway, I was having, I have some group of friends that I chat with online over the past like 20 something years. And most of the time we talk about politics and social topics. But mostly we talk about cars quite a lot, vehicles, cars, because that's really a big interest of mine. And these are a bunch of friends that I've known for ages. And one of the topics that we were talking about this morning was there was this China brand of SUV, I think, that had like 600 horsepower or something like that, and it's cheap, right, for what you get out of it. But the funny thing is, one of the points that we notice is that if that car pulled up right beside you, you probably wouldn't even care too much about it because everything looks the same these days, especially for SUVs. And if you take a look outside, almost every single car is white for practicality, and it's just what became kind of trendy since Apple kind of took over the mindset of people of what's cool the past 20 years or so. And then at the same time, obviously from government regulations in terms of fuel efficiency and those kind of things. So we get cars that all look the same. Factor in the fact that car brands are just not trying anymore. Every single car brand churns up pretty much exactly the same car, and the question is why, right? And it ultimately comes out to how much our modern society relies on data in terms of how we decide to make things and do things. And data in theory is, fact based and statistically proven, peer reviewed, etc. So why fight against it? If you know that people will buy certain type of looks and design, why go against the grain and eventually just like target 20% of the market rather than hitting 50 or 60? And where am I going with this from a context of jiu-jitsu? I think we are reaching the same problem, or I wouldn't say problem, but same phenomenon when it comes to jiu-jitsu and where it is right now. So looking back, when I first started around 2013 or so, 2014, 2013, you know how it is where our sources of information came directly from our coaches and instructors and from the guys who actually get the opportunity to attend seminars overseas, or they can afford to join seminars and visit their country if they're lucky enough to have that access. In Singapore, we're fortunate enough to have that even back in the early 2010s. But in general, from a content perspective, even though internet was, we were already doing broadband and 3G at that time, but ultimately, most of our BJJ content still has to come from apps. Stuff that Stefan Kesting, for example, creates. We still have to buy clunky DVDs, have it shipped, wait for it, etc. And even those things take time, right? Because a lot of times we have to wait for somebody to pull off a certain move in a tournament that we cannot watch live, right? And that will take weeks, if not months, before somebody decides to put in the effort to create content for it. market it, etc. And then by the time it reaches our shores, it'll probably be like 3 6 months down the road from the time a certain athlete comes up with it. And also another thing was our sport was very heavily circled around gi back then, right? So, and now with the proliferation of no-gi popularity since probably around 2015 or so, when ADCC really started having the same clout as IBJJF titles, that we kind of have it coincided with how technology progressed, right? In terms of streaming, in terms of how cheap data is, how easy it is to create content, record, the quality of our phones, it's all those kind of things. So what I observed was that, let me put it out first, that the skill level that we have today of BJJ athletes are without a doubt extremely high, a lot higher than it was 15 years, 10 years ago. A lot of kids these days who probably don't even qualify for a blue belt because of age can, can compete and beat black belts, right? You got like phenoms like the Rotolos who are world champions when they were still single digit age and teaching seminars at 12. And then, you got like Helena Crevar and those kind of phenom kids that are just like amazing. And there is a reason for that. And a lot of it it comes from data as well. I think the new style of game in terms of no-gi focus, especially leg lock focus game, kind of broke the system wherein we kind of grew up with traditional BJJ wherein position over submission concept, right? That's such a thing that everybody adheres to, wherein, put somebody down, pass the guard, secure the pin, then go for the sub, right? When you have the whole control. But now with the availability and the commonality of attacking legs, you don't need to pin anybody anymore. Like entanglement is the new pin, and essentially it's an addition to the upper body pins. So which is, is that a bad thing? No, of course it's part of the game. Like as somebody who loves wrist locks, I don't like the idea of people saying that it's cheesy to attack legs all the time. Stop biting me. But at the same time, it is just what it is, right? So I'm not one of those older guys who's like, back in my days, it was a lot better back then. No, that's not the point from the context of this discussion. But what I kind of see the problem is that we might be reaching a stage where this is like almost at the pinnacle of what we can do as human beings in this sport of grappling. If you take outlier qualities out of the equation, meaning you take somebody with extraordinary strength, flexibility, agility, speed, especially in our sport where it is starting to become more and more young people focused and more comp centric. And also, I don't want to get into it too much, but the open acceptance and of using PEDs and things like that makes the sport out of touch for me, in my opinion, towards people who are not in the path of trying to be competitive, or not in the path of trying to prove that they have to hit certain objectives or targets, such as winning medals, which goes back to being competitive. But some people don't even compete; they just want to be the guy, in their gym. And I think we are reaching the point where the stuff that the coaches right? The greatest coaches and instructors and athletes that we have access to these days. Just turn on the TV and you can hit on YouTube, BJJ Fanatics, or whatever, to get access to all these top level guys. We are reaching the stage where we have so much access to data. We already know what are the highest percentage of submission rate and how we positions our head and body, etc., to get maximum physical leverage, momentum, and weight placement vector and all that stuff, and how to bend and twist joints in the most efficient way possible. I think we have reached a stage where we're starting to hit a diminishing returns in terms of what we can discover, especially in no gi, because in gi the variance of adding grips, of having a fabric, of having grips, and the level of entanglement that happens because of the grips, because of how you can pin, forces creativity to come in. Wherein big, slow, chunky guys may still find something very unique that works for them, that isn't based on, that isn't just based on purely being athletic. You're looking at like a guy like Hodger, for example, where you still see classical moves work at the highest level. Where in no-gi, I sincerely doubt we have seen any like classic like close guard arm bars and even normal triangles entries that work anymore, right? A lot of times matches either finish with no score, nobody winning, or leg locks, or the usual RNCs, right? That has become like more, and the finish has started to become less and less creative. You just have different entries to it simply because everybody's learning the same thing. Everybody's camp passing, everybody's body lock passing, everybody's um, 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 doing the same stuff. It's just a matter of who can identify a, a, a hack that can break that focus move, so you can kind of chain it to something else rather than finding something completely different to use against, that you don't even end up having to deal with that scenario. Because watching all the comps that we have, these are whether CGI, ADCC, or whatever, they are quite boring, unless you're a real nerd and you're looking at specific reasons why something happens. And I know that watching old IBJJF stuff is just the same. It's just as boring, because we get phases where people are just doing one thing at a time. Like during the Mendes Meow days, everybody's just doing the Lahiva and bolos and finish with bow and arrows and win by points and things like that, because back takes are 4 points, etc., etc. I get that, but the cycle is a lot shorter. It's like you get like 2 years of that or 1 year of that, and everybody kind of moves on, and you get like all sorts of weird stuff that comes out, especially Keenan stuff, right? All the lapel stuff that came out, and then yeah, you get all the turtle stuff from, I forgot the guy's name, Tellus, and so I just feel like we are reaching the stage where we're using data in terms of what we know is efficient, what we know is what we know works, and we are focusing on what we call HPM, right? The highest percentage move from every single position. It's like, why would you want to waste years developing your own wacky style and preference of your own game preference when all these experts and top level athletes have already given the formula to you to copy? So I get it from a sport and a perspective. That's why even at the NBA, for example, I loved watching the NBA before. But even now, I don't watch regular season games. Why? Because even though the plays themselves are complicated, and there's so many nuances that happens in terms of what play they run, but at the same time, the end result is the same. Everybody does a pick and roll or a dribble handoff to a 3 point shot or a dunk. That's all they do, right? Nobody does anything different. Like even the dunks are not that exciting because the way they do the plays is so efficient that the person running straight to the dunk has a free path. It's not like back in the 80s or 90s where if somebody's going to try to dunk, they're going to be met with like three guys that's going to try to chop your head off. You don't see that anymore these days in basketball. And I think we see that as well in Jiu-Jitsu, where in analytics and probability is taking over creativity. And again, for athletes, I get it. I totally understand, especially for like even in schools that are doing like comp class and things like that. I totally understand. But from a personal perspective, from a practitioner perspective, I feel like that is a waste of our human creativity. That is a waste of our ability to find things that make things fun in terms and rather it kind of falls into like the Singapore or East Asian schooling trap we're in. No, we're not trying to be creative and find creative solutions for things. Our job is to answer examinations as best as we can to get the highest grades that we can. Is that a good thing? I don't know. I don't think so. The pet feeders dispensing food. Anyway, I don't think so. I feel like it's also I think a negative thing if you are running a school and you're focusing on that. Even with the whole, ecological thing coming on, that is, yes, it's more exploratory. Yes, it offers more leeway, but it's still kind of like the same thing. You're trying to find the most optimal way of getting to something, and and ultimately it still ends up with the same thing. You still end up doing passing, camp passing and things like that. But I think that at least the eco stuff has more specific things that allow you to explore based on what your own personal limitations are. But in general, the whole nogi space is just everybody's trying to be the same thing. Everybody's trying to be the next Gordon, or at least follow the game of Gordon, of Craig, of Joseph, or whoever it is that you want to follow. But they all kind of play the same game, like, right? Unless you got like outlier guys who have like massive amount of agility, kind of like Tackett or the Rotolos, or insane like flexibility like Mikey and Levi, or you go to the big guys, right? You go to the Nicky Rods and Gordons, where and the Marigalis, where they have the size and strength, but they're all doing the same thing. They're all kind of doing the same thing. So, with the exception of the Rotolos, you know. That's why they're still kind of fun, but I think they kind of came from a more traditional style of learning and system, so they haven't been indoctrinated, I guess, as much as the other guys who are in a more data centric type of coaching, and I think it's unfortunate because not everyone is in that path of competitiveness and trying to win medals and achieve certain type of quote unquote dominance in their own training. That's probably like 15-20% of practitioners. I'm just throwing random percentage numbers up, but most of us are doing this, especially as an older age. We're not doing this to compete. We're not doing this to prove that we're better than somebody else. We're doing this to explore, to have fun, to stay fit, to work our brain cells to figure out this puzzle, this infinitely interesting sport. And I think most schools are focusing on that 20% of students and customers, because they're the ones who are excited about it. But unfortunately, they're not the ones who stay the longest either, right? And it's the older people who think this is of value. They're the ones who can afford to pay and continue to come back and find time for this beyond just 2 3 years. And I think it's just not my thing in terms of I enjoy doing it. I've improved a lot because of that way of learning and that level of focus, because it cuts down a lot of shiny object things that to work on. But at the same time, it gets boring because everybody's doing the same thing, and you will hit a point where, especially as an older person, that you can do as good of inside camp pass or tripod pass as you can. At the end of the day, you will lose in terms of your stamina, your strength, your size, etc. That there's really no counter to it, because you cannot keep up to the aggression and the amount of mental okayness to sacrifice your knee and your or spine, to do leg lock battles and things like that. So again, it's not a rant or anything. It's just my opinion, and I feel that we are hitting a point of we are nearing the optimal stages of understanding how this works in relation to the human body. And we're just like everything that we have right now in society, from frigging phones that all look the same, cars that all look the same, we all dress the same, everybody's the whole world is just like a flat pack IKEA box that everybody's churning out. And unfortunately, I think BJJ is also heading that way. So that's all I have. Laundry's done. I'm gonna dry it, hang up stuff, and I hope to see you next time. Jiu-Jitsu Uncle out. See ya.